Let's now talk a little bit about links. So links are useful for providing alternative names for files and directories. So it's kind of a shortcut to a file or a directory. So instead of writing a very long path name, so for example, if we have, let's say, ls-l, and then we want to access some file which has a very long path name, let's say this user share /doc/ let's say this directory, and then, for example, this file, right? So if we want to display some information about this file, this is a very long path name, right? Instead of this, if we create a link to this file, then we can use this link, right? So for example, we create a link called readme in our home directory, right? So we can just access the same file based on the shortcut, right? So if there is a shortcut called readme.txt that points to this file, then instead of writing this full path name, we can just use this shortcut, okay? Or this link. So let's see how to create a link. To do this, there is a command called ln, right? So again, you can check the man pages of ln, but basically it allows you to make links, right? So if we want to create a link for this full path name here, then we just use ln, right? And then we have this file, right? And we want to give it a link, and let's call this link, I want to create it within my home directory. So my home directory slash, let's just call it readme.txt, for example, right? So by doing this, there is a file that has been created in my home directory, and it's called readme.txt, right? And this is actually a link to this file, right? So using this one or this one allows me to access exactly the same file, right? So if I display the content of this full path name, it's exactly the same as if I display just this readme.txt, right? But this one is much easier. It's easy to write, right? It's just a shortcut. I don't have to write all this full path name here. And by the way, remember when we used ls-l for this file, it gives us some information about this file. And this information that you see here is actually the number of hard links or number of links for this file, right? So now that we created another link, let's do it again and see if it displays 2. So now we have 2 links to this file, right? Um, Same thing, we can do it for the other shortcut that we created, right? Now this readme.txt that we just created, it's a link to this file, right? But it's called a hard link. So actually there are 2 types of links. There is a hard link and there is a soft link, or it's also called symbolic link, right? So to create a hard link, it's very easy. As we saw, is just using ln, right? So for example, ln and then the file and the link that we want to create, right? And if we want to create a symbolic link or a soft link, then we just add the -s option, right? So ln has an option called -s that allows us to create a symbolic link instead of a hard link, right? So let's call it just something like soft.txt, soft link. So we can see that there is a new file that has been created, and this file is a soft link to this one, right? So same thing, if I try to access the content of this file using this link, then I can do this, right? So this is just a symbolic or soft link. So if I try to display some information about this file, we can see that we can see this thing here. So we see that it's a link to this one, right? It's a symbolic link that points to this file, right? And you can see an L here indicating that it's a symbolic link. So those links they have a much easier name to use rather than using a very long name like this one. So they are more convenient to use. Now there are some differences between hard links and soft links, right? So for example, hard links cannot link to a directory, but soft links can, right? So if we create, let's try to create a hard link, for example, to this directory, /user/share/doc, for example, just this one. Let's call this link lnk. So since we didn't use the -s option, this means that we want to create a hard link here, right? This will not happen, right? It will complain. So hard link not allowed for directory. But if we try to create a soft link, then this is possible, right? So now if we check here, we see that there is a soft link that has been created, and it represents just this directory, right? So if I just do, if I list the content of lnk, this is the same thing as listing the content of this directory. And maybe another difference is that hard links cannot link a file on one device or partition to another file on another device or partition. But soft links can do this, right? So this is another difference. The last command that I wanted to show you is just a very simple command called du. It stands for directory usage, right? So if, for example, I use du and then I specify this directory, then it will show me how much disk space usage um, for each directory within this one, right? So if I do this, I will get for each subdirectory how much space it takes, right? So for example, this one takes this, right? And so on. You can use the -h option to get human readable units here, right? So if I do this, I get something like this. And if you want, for example, to get the total usage for this directory only, the total usage for only this directory, then you can just use the -s option, right? So this directory, including all its contents, takes this space. You can also use here the -h option in addition to this one. So I can write it this way, or -h, -s-h. So it takes 73 megabytes. And you can also specify several directories as arguments here. So for example, we want this one, we want the directory bin, and we want the directory, for example, /home/Rafik. So for each of those, it will display the disk space usage.